The phone call came at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I know because I was staring at the clock, watching the minutes tick by while my 10-year-old son fought for his life in the hospital bed next to me. "Mrs. Warner, you need to come to the ICU immediately." My name is Martina, and that night changed everything I thought I knew about family. I'd been living in that sterile hospital room for 6 days, surviving on vending machine coffee and the false hope that Kelvin's condition would somehow magically improve. The doctors had been clear from the start. Without the experimental treatment, my son had maybe weeks. With it, he had a real chance. The treatment cost $180,000. I had $3,200 in my checking account. "Mom, are you scared?" Kelvin whispered when I returned from talking to Dr. Martinez in the hallway. His voice was so small, so fragile. The machines around him beeped steadily, the only sound keeping me sane. "No, baby. Mommy's going to fix this." I smoothed his hair back from his forehead. "I promise," but I was terrified. Single mothers don't have $180,000 lying around. I'd already maxed out my credit cards, taken a loan against my car, and borrowed from my 401k. It wasn't enough. Not even close. That's when I made the call I'd been dreading. "Dad, it's Martina. I need help." The silence stretched so long, I thought the call had dropped. "Martina, it's 4 a.m. "I know, I'm sorry. It's Kelvin. He's really sick and there's this treatment." "Hold on. Let me get your mother." I heard rustling, whispered voices, then Mom's sharp tone cut through the phone. "What's wrong with Kelvin?" I explained everything. The diagnosis, the treatment, the cost. I laid it all out, trying to keep my voice steady even as tears streamed down my face. $180,000? Mom's voice pitched higher. "Martina, that's impossible. We don't have that kind of money." "I'm not asking for all of it. Just whatever you can." "We can't." Dad's voice was firm, final. "We're barely making ends meet as it is. Your mother's medical bills, the house payments. This is my son we're talking about. Your grandson." "We know that," Mom said, but her tone was cold, distant. "But we simply cannot help you. You'll have to figure something else out." Figure something else out, like I hadn't been trying, like I hadn't already sold everything I owned, hadn't already begged every bank in the city. "Please," I whispered. "I'm begging you. He's just a little boy." "I'm sorry, Martina. We can't." The line went dead. I sat there in that uncomfortable hospital chair, staring at my phone, feeling something inside me crack. These were the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, who were supposed to move heaven and earth for their family. Robin found me there an hour later, sobbing into my hands. "Hey, what happened?" She sat down beside me, wrapping her arms around my shoulders. Robin had been my best friend since college, the sister I'd chosen instead of the family I'd been born into. "They said no." The words came out broken. "They said they don't have the money." Robin held me while I cried, not saying anything, just being there. That's what real family does. 3 days later, I was in the hospital cafeteria when I overheard Mom talking to someone on the phone. "Oh yes, we're so proud of Toby. Another brilliant business idea. We were happy to invest in his new restaurant concept." I felt the blood drain from my face. I moved closer, pretending to study the sandwich options. $50,000 to start, but we know he'll pay us back. He always does so well with these ventures. $50,000. They'd given my brother $50,000 for another one of his half-baked business ideas while my son was dying upstairs. I walked back to Kelvin's room in a daze. He was awake, trying to smile for me, even though I could see how much pain he was in. "Did you talk to Grandma and Grandpa?" he asked. "Yeah, baby, I did." "Are they coming to visit?" I looked at my son, really looked at him, at his pale skin, his sunken eyes, his brave little smile, and I made a decision that would define the rest of our lives. "They can't come right now, but that's okay. We don't need them." That afternoon, I walked into the most dangerous part of town and borrowed money from people who don't take no for an answer. I signed papers that could have destroyed us both. But I got the money. Kelvin got his treatment. And I learned something that night that I would never, ever forget. When the people who are supposed to love you abandon you in your darkest hour, you remember. You remember everything. They had chosen Toby over Kelvin, chosen his restaurant dreams over their grandson's life. I would never forget that, and someday, somehow, I would make sure they remembered it too. The loan sharks wanted their money back in 6 months. With interest, I owed them $240,000. I took 3 jobs. Mornings, I worked data entry at an insurance company. Afternoons, I cleaned office buildings. Nights, I waited tables at a 24-hour diner. I slept maybe 4 hours a night, usually in my car between shifts. "Martina, you look like hell," Robin said, finding me passed out at my kitchen table one Thursday morning. She had a key to my apartment. Someone needed to check on Kelvin when I couldn't be there. "Thanks for the pep talk." I rubbed my eyes, trying to focus. "What time is it?" 7 a.m. Kelvin's getting ready for school. When's the last time you ate a real meal? I couldn't remember. Food was expensive, and every dollar went toward the debt or Kelvin's follow-up treatments. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're killing yourself." "Better than the alternative." Robin sat down across from me. "How much do you still owe?" $215,000, give or take. She whistled low. "Jesus, Martina. I'll figure it out. I always do." But the truth was, I was drowning. The interest alone was crushing me. Every month I barely made a dent in the principal. At this rate, I'd be paying until Kelvin graduated college. The call came on a Saturday while I was scrubbing toilets at the Meridian building downtown. "Martina, it's Mom." I almost dropped the phone in the toilet bowl. We hadn't spoken since that night at the hospital, 8 months ago. "What do you want?" "That's no way to talk to your mother. How's Kelvin doing?" "He's alive. No thanks to you." A pause. "We heard about his recovery. We're so glad." "Cut the crap, Mom. Why are you calling? We're having a party for Toby next weekend. He's getting engaged to that lovely girl, Sarah. We'd love for you and Kelvin to come." I sat back on my heels, staring at the grimy bathroom floor. "You're kidding me." "It's family, Martina. Despite everything, we're still family." "Family?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Where was family when Kelvin was dying?" "We explained that. We couldn't—" "But you could give Toby 50 grand for his restaurant." Silence. "How did you—" "I heard you. At the hospital, bragging about your investment in his brilliant business idea." "That was different. That was what? More important than your grandson's life?" "Don't be dramatic, Martina. Toby's restaurant is doing very well, actually. He's already talking about opening a second location." Of course he was. Golden boy Toby, who'd never failed at anything because Mom and Dad were always there to catch him when he fell. "I can't come to the party." "Why not? Because I'll be working. All 3 of my jobs. You know, the ones I need to pay for the treatment you wouldn't help with. Martina. I hung up. That night, I came home from the diner at 2 a.m. to find Kelvin still awake, doing homework at the kitchen table. Why aren't you in bed? Couldn't sleep. Mrs. Patterson assigned this huge history project. I looked over his shoulder. He was writing about family traditions. My heart clenched. What are you writing about? I was going to write about Grandma's Sunday dinners, but... He looked up at me with those big, serious eyes. We don't really do that anymore, do we? No, baby, we don't. Why don't Grandma and Grandpa visit anymore? I sat down next to him, suddenly exhausted. How do you explain to a 10-year-old that his grandparents chose money over his life? Sometimes adults make choices that hurt people, even people they're supposed to love. Did they make a choice that hurt us? Yeah, they did. He nodded solemnly, like he'd suspected as much. It's okay, Mom. We don't need them. We have Robin. And each other. That's right. We have each other. But as I tucked him into bed that night, I made myself a promise. Someday when I wasn't drowning in debt and exhaustion, when I had the luxury of thinking beyond survival, I would make sure my parents understood exactly what their choice had cost. The next morning, Robin showed up with coffee and bagels. You look better. I slept 3 whole hours. Living the dream. She sat down, studying my face. I've been thinking about your situation. Don't. I'll figure it out. What if you didn't have to figure it out alone? I looked up from my coffee. What do you mean? I mean, what if there was another way? You're smart, Martina. Smarter than anyone gives you credit for. Maybe it's time to stop just surviving and start thinking bigger. Bigger? How? I don't know yet. But I know you. You're not going to let this break you. And when you come out the other side of this, you're going to be stronger than ever. She was right about one thing. I wasn't going to let this break me. But she was wrong about something else. I wasn't going to wait until I came out the other side. I was going to start planning my comeback right now. The breakthrough came from the most unlikely place. My data entry job at the insurance company. I was inputting claims at 6 a.m., half dead from exhaustion, when I noticed something weird in the system. The software kept crashing whenever adjusters tried to cross-reference medical codes with treatment outcomes. Simple stuff that should have taken seconds was taking hours. This system is garbage, muttered Jake, one of the senior adjusters, as his computer froze again. What if it didn't have to be? I said before I could stop myself. He looked at me like I'd grown a second head. What? The problem? I think I know how to fix it. Jake laughed. Your data entry, sweetheart. Leave the tech stuff to the professionals. But I couldn't let it go. That night after my diner shift, I stayed up until dawn sketching out a solution. A simple algorithm that could streamline the entire claims process. You look like you've seen a ghost, Robin said when she found me at my kitchen table the next morning, surrounded by papers covered in code. I think I figured something out. She looked at my scribbles. What is this? A way to fix the insurance software at work. Maybe make it into something bigger. Bigger how? I showed her my calculations. If this works, it could save companies millions in processing time, and if I can build it right, license it out. Robin's eyes widened. Martina, this could be huge. Or it could be nothing. I don't know anything about starting a business. So, learn. That weekend, I spent every free minute at the library, reading everything I could about software development, patents, and startup funding. Kelvin sat next to me, doing his homework while I filled notebook after notebook with plans. "What are you working on, Mom?" "Something that might change our lives, baby." 3 months later, I had a working prototype. I'd taught myself basic coding through YouTube videos and online tutorials, staying up until 3 a.m. every night to make it work. "Holy shit, Martina," Robin said, watching the demo on my ancient laptop. "This actually works." "Language," I said automatically, glancing at Kelvin. "Sorry, but seriously, this is incredible. Have you shown anyone at work?" "Are you crazy? They'd steal it in a heartbeat." Instead, I did something that terrified me. I used my last $500 to file a provisional patent. Then, I started reaching out to small insurance companies, offering to demo my software. The first 10 said no. The 11th said maybe. The 12th said yes. "We'll pay you $5,000 for a 6-month trial," said the CEO of Meridian Insurance, a mid-sized company in the next town over. $5,000. It wasn't much, but it was a start. "I need to quit one of my jobs," I told Robin that night. "Which one?" "The cleaning. I need time to develop this properly." "Can you afford to quit?" I looked at my bank statement. I was still $180,000 in debt to some very dangerous people, but the software trial was promising. "I can't afford not to." The next 6 months were a blur of 18-hour days. I kept my data entry job and the diner shifts, but every spare moment went into improving the software. Kelvin learned to make his own dinner and help with laundry. He never complained. "Mom, there's a letter for you," he said one evening, holding up an official-looking envelope. My heart stopped. The loan sharks had been patient so far, but patience has limits. I opened it with shaking hands. Then I read it again. Then I sat down hard on the couch. "What is it?" Kelvin asked, worried. "Meridian wants to buy the software, outright." "Is that good?" I looked at the number on the offer letter. $250,000. "Yeah, baby, that's very good." But I didn't take their first offer. I'd learned enough to know better. I found a lawyer who worked on contingency and negotiated. The final deal was $400,000 up front, plus royalties on every license sold. The day the check cleared, I paid off the loan sharks. All of it. Then I took Kelvin out for the most expensive dinner we'd ever had. "Are we rich now?" he asked, cutting into his steak. "We're safe now. That's better than rich." But I wasn't done. The software was selling faster than anyone expected. Other companies wanted their own versions. I started a consulting business, helping insurance companies streamline their systems. Within 2 years, I had 6 employees and contracts worth over $1 million annually. "You did it," Robin said, looking around my new office. "You actually did it." "We did it. I couldn't have done this without you." She'd been my business partner from the beginning, handling the administrative side while I focused on development. We were both finally making real money. That's when I started paying attention to my family again. Not because I missed them, but because I was curious. What had happened to Golden Boy Toby and his restaurant empire? The answer came from Marcel, the lawyer who'd helped me negotiate my first software deal. "Your brother's in trouble," he said during one of our regular meetings. "Big trouble. His restaurants are failing, and he owes a lot of people a lot of money." "How much trouble?" Marcel pulled out a file. "He's defaulted on 3 business loans. Your parents co-signed for 2 of them. They're looking at foreclosure within the year." I stared at the documents. After all these years, after all their success and my struggle, they were broke. Worse than broke. There's more, Marcel said. The house they live in? Your childhood home? It's part of the collateral. My parents were about to lose everything because of Toby's failures. The same Toby they'd chosen over Kelvin. Over me. Can you find out who holds the debt? I can try. Why? I smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. Just curious. I was 7 years old the first time I realized my parents loved Toby more than me. It was Christmas morning. I'd asked Santa for a bike, a simple red one I'd seen at Walmart. Instead, I got a coloring book and some crayons. Toby, who was 5, got the bike, plus a remote control car, a train set, and about 10 other toys. Santa must have mixed up the lists, I said to Mom, trying not to cry. Don't be greedy, Martina. You got plenty. But Toby looked at me with those big brown eyes and said, You can ride my bike sometimes. That was Toby. Even as a kid, he was generous with the abundance that always seemed to flow his way. It wasn't his fault our parents worshipped him. When he was 8, they bought him piano lessons. When I asked for the same thing at 10, they said music wasn't practical for girls. When he wanted to play baseball, Dad coached his team. When I made varsity soccer, they missed every game because of Toby's piano recitals. College was the worst. They paid his full tuition to state, bought him a car, gave him spending money. I got student loans and a part-time job at the campus bookstore. Toby's going to be something special, Mom always said. He has that spark. Apparently, I didn't have the spark. I just had stubbornness and a willingness to work 3 jobs to survive. The phone rang on a Tuesday evening while I was helping Kelvin with his algebra homework. He was 14 now, taller than me, and getting straight A's despite everything we'd been through. Martina? It's Dad. I hadn't heard from them in over 3 years, not since Mom's awkward invitation to Toby's engagement party. What do you want? We need to talk. Can you come over? I'm busy. It's important. It's about the family. I almost laughed. What family? Please, Martina. We really need your help. The desperation in his voice was new. Dad had never sounded desperate before. I'll think about it. We'll be home tomorrow evening. Please come. He hung up before I could say no. Who was that? Kelvin asked, looking up from his homework. Grandpa. Are we going to see them? I studied his face. He was curious, not excited. He barely remembered his grandparents. Maybe. Would you want to? He shrugged. I guess, if you want to. The next evening, I drove to my childhood home for the first time in years. The house looked smaller than I remembered, and the yard was overgrown. Dad's car was old, maybe 10 years, with a dent in the front bumper. Mom answered the door. She'd aged badly, grey hair, deep lines around her eyes, clothes that had seen better days. Martina, you look... She paused, taking in my designer jeans and expensive handbag. You look well. Thanks. The living room was exactly the same, down to the ugly brown couch and the family photos on the mantel. Photos of Toby at graduation, Toby's wedding, Toby with his kids. One small picture of Kelvin as a baby, tucked behind the others. Dad came in from the kitchen, carrying 3 cups of coffee. His hands shook slightly as he set them down. How's Kelvin? Mom asked. He's fine, healthy. No thanks to you. She flinched. Martina, we've been over this. Have we? Because I don't remember you ever actually explaining why Toby's restaurant was more important than your grandson's life. That's not fair, Dad said quietly. Fair? I stood up. You want to talk about fair? Let's talk about fair. Sit down, please, Mom said. We asked you here because we need your help. My help. It's Toby, Dad said. He's in trouble, real trouble. I sat back down, curious despite myself. What kind of trouble? The restaurant's failed, Mom said, her voice barely above a whisper. All of them. He owes money to banks, investors, suppliers, everyone. How much money? Dad cleared his throat. About $800,000. I whistled low. That's a lot of money. We co-signed on some of the loans, Mom said. We thought he'd turn it around. He always has before. But he didn't this time. No, he didn't. So what does this have to do with me? They looked at each other. Some silent communication passed between them. We heard you've done well for yourself, Dad said. Your software business. You heard right. We were hoping maybe you could help us out, just temporarily, until we figure something out. I stared at them. You want me to bail you out? It's not a bailout, Mom said quickly. It's a loan. We'll pay you back. With what? You just told me you're broke. We have the house, Dad said. We could use it as collateral. The house you're about to lose anyway? Their faces went pale. How did you... I have good lawyers, Dad. I know exactly how much trouble you're in. Mom started crying, actual tears streaming down her cheeks. Please, Martina, we know we haven't been... We know we made mistakes, but we're family. Family helps family. Family helps family, I repeated. That's interesting. Where was that philosophy 7 years ago? You couldn't help save your grandson's life, but you could give Toby hundreds of thousands of dollars for restaurants that anyone with half a brain could see were going to fail. We believed in him, Dad said weakly. You believed in him, but not in me. Never in me. I stood up again. I'll think about it. Martina, wait. I said I'll think about it. I'll let you know. I walked to the door, then turned back. By the way, where is Toby? Shouldn't the golden boy be here, begging for himself? Mom's face crumpled. He's not speaking to us right now. He blames us for not giving him enough money to save the restaurants. Of course he did. Even in failure, Toby found a way to make himself the victim. I'll be in touch, I said, and walked out. In my car, I sat for a moment, staring at the house where I'd grown up feeling like a second-class citizen. Then I pulled out my phone and called Marcel. I need you to find out who holds the debt on my parents' house, I said. I can do that. Are you thinking of helping them? I'm thinking of a lot of things. Martina, be careful. Family situations can get complicated. Marcel, it's already complicated. I'm just evening the odds. Marcel's office smelled like leather and expensive coffee. He had the kind of success I was still getting used to. Corner office, mahogany desk, view of the city skyline. The debt is held by Pinnacle Financial, he said, sliding a folder across his desk. They bought it from the original lender 6 months ago. I opened the file. The numbers were worse than I'd thought. My parents owed $340,000 on the house, plus another $180,000 in business loans they'd co-signed for Toby. $500,000, I said. Give or take. Pinnacle's been patient so far, but they're starting foreclosure proceedings next month. What would it cost to buy the debt? Marcel raised an eyebrow. You want to buy your parents' debt? Hypothetically. Hypothetically, Pinnacle would probably sell for 60 cents on the dollar. They want to get rid of it without going through a lengthy foreclosure process. I did the math. $300,000 to own my parents' financial future. Can you set up a meeting? Martina, are you sure about this? Once you own that debt, you have complete control over their house, their credit, their lives. I know. And if they can't pay you back? Then they lose the house. Marcel studied my face. This isn't just business for you, is it? No, it's not. What's the endgame here? I closed the file. Justice. 2 days later, I was sitting across from David Kim, Pinnacle Financial's senior vice president. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with the kind of aggressive confidence that comes from making money off other people's misery. Your lawyer says you're interested in the Warner debt package, he said. I am. Can I ask why? It's not exactly a prime investment. The borrowers are elderly, limited income, and the primary guarantor is in bankruptcy. I have my reasons. He shrugged. Your money. We're asking $320,000 for the full package. $280. $300. $290, and you have a deal. We shook hands. Just like that, I owned my parents' lives. That evening, I called Savannah Hall, the branch manager at First National Bank, where my parents had their accounts. I'd done my homework. She was professional, discreet, and had a reputation for handling difficult family situations. I need to schedule a meeting, I told her. My parents think they're coming in to discuss loan modification options. I need you to facilitate a conversation. What kind of conversation? The kind where they find out who really holds their debt now. Savannah was quiet for a moment. Mrs. Warner, I have to ask, is this legal? Completely legal. I own the debt fair and square. I just want to be there when they realize it. And you want me to be the one to tell them? I want you to present the facts. Let them draw their own conclusions. This sounds like it could get emotional. It probably will. Another pause. When do you want to schedule this? Tomorrow afternoon, 2 o'clock. I hung up and immediately called my parents. Dad, it's Martina. I've been thinking about what you said. And? I want to help, but I need to understand the full situation first. Can you meet me at First National tomorrow? 2 o'clock? Of course. Martina, thank you so much. I knew we could count on you. Don't thank me yet, Dad. Let's see what we're dealing with first. The next morning, I called in sick to work, something I hadn't done in years. I spent the day getting ready, choosing my outfit carefully. Professional, but not flashy. I wanted to look successful, but I didn't want to seem like I was showing off. At 1:45, I walked into First National Bank. Savannah was waiting for me in her office. Are you ready for this? She asked. I've been ready for 7 years. Your parents just arrived. They're in conference room B. And Toby? He's with them. He looks rough. I wasn't surprised. Bankruptcy tends to age people quickly. Let's do this. We walked down the hallway to the conference room. Through the glass door, I could see my parents sitting at the oval table, looking nervous and small. Toby was slumped in his chair, wearing a wrinkled shirt and jeans. He'd gained weight and lost hair since I'd last seen him. I took a deep breath and opened the door. Martina! Mom jumped up, trying to hug me. I stepped back. Mom, Dad. I nodded at Toby. Brother. Thanks for coming, Dad said. We really appreciate this. Don't thank me yet. Savannah entered behind me, carrying a thick folder. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Savannah Hall, branch manager. I understand you're here to discuss your loan situation. That's right, Dad said. Martina's going to help us work something out. I see. Well, let me start by reviewing your current status. Savannah opened the folder. As of yesterday, your total debt obligation is $520,000. Mom gasped. That much? The house mortgage, plus the business loans you co-signed, plus accrued interest and fees. But we can work something out, right? Toby spoke for the first time. His voice was hoarse. Payment plans, loan modifications, something that depends on your creditor, Savannah said smoothly. The good news is, your debt was recently purchased by a new lender, someone who might be more willing to work with you. Who? Dad asked. Savannah looked at me. I nodded. The new owner of your debt is sitting right here at this table. The silence was deafening. Mom looked confused. Dad's face went white. Toby sat up straight for the first time since I'd walked in. What does that mean? Mom asked. It means, I said quietly, that you don't owe the bank anymore. You owe me. You? Toby's voice cracked. You bought our debt? Every penny of it. Dad stared at me like he'd never seen me before. Why would you do that? I leaned back in my chair, finally allowing myself to smile. Because now we can have a real conversation about family helping family. The room felt like a vacuum. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Toby exploded. Are you fucking kidding me? He slammed his hand on the table. You bought our debt? What kind of sick game is this? Language, Toby, I said calmly. Don't you dare tell me to watch my language. You just ambushed us. I prefer to think of it as a family meeting. Mom was shaking her head, tears streaming down her face. I don't understand. Why would you do this to us? Do what, Mom? Help you? Isn't that what you asked me to do? This isn't help, Dad said, his voice barely above a whisper. This is cruel. Cruel. I let the word hang in the air. That's an interesting choice of words. Savannah cleared her throat. Perhaps I should give you some privacy. No, stay, I said. I want a witness for this conversation. Toby leaned forward, his face red with anger. What do you want, Martina? Money? Is this about money? Everything's about money with you, isn't it, Toby? Don't turn this around on me. You're the one who bought our debt like some kind of loan shark. Actually, I bought it from loan sharks. Much more civilized this way. Mom wiped her eyes with a tissue. Martina, please, we're your family. My family. I opened my purse and pulled out a photograph. It was Kelvin at age 10, lying in that hospital bed, tubes and wires everywhere. I placed it on the table. Do you remember this, Mom? She glanced at the photo and looked away quickly. Do you remember what I asked you for? Martina, I asked you to help save your grandson's life, your own flesh and blood. And what did you tell me? Silence. You told me you didn't have the money. You told me to figure something else out. We didn't have it, Dad said weakly. But you had $50,000 for Toby's restaurant. That was different. How? My voice was getting louder. How was it different? The restaurant was an investment, Mom said. It was going to pay us back, and my son's life wasn't worth investing in. Toby shifted in his chair. Look, I'm sorry about what happened with Kelvin, okay? But that doesn't give you the right to destroy our family. Destroy your family? I laughed, and it sounded harsh even to me. "Toby, you destroyed your own family. You've been bleeding them dry for years." "I always paid them back. When? When did you ever pay them back? The first restaurant that failed? The food truck that got repossessed? The catering business that lasted 6 months?" His face went even redder. Those were learning experiences. Those were disasters, and every time you failed, Mom and Dad were right there with their checkbook, ready to fund your next brilliant idea. They believed in me. They enabled you. There's a difference. Dad found his voice. "What do you want from us, Martina?" I looked around the table at their faces. Fear, anger, confusion, desperation. For the first time in my life, I held all the power in this family. "I want you to understand what it feels like to be abandoned by the people who are supposed to love you." "We never abandoned you," Mom said. "You abandoned me the night you chose Toby's restaurant over Kelvin's life." "We couldn't afford—" "Stop lying!" I slammed my own hand on the table, making everyone jump. "Just stop lying! You had the money! You chose not to give it to me!" Savannah shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "Perhaps we should discuss the practical aspects of the debt transfer." "Yes, let's do that." I pulled out a folder of my own. "Here are your options. You can pay me the full amount, $520,000, within 30 days. "We don't have that kind of money," Dad said. "Then you can make monthly payments of $8,000 for the next 15 years. $8,000 a month. Mom's voice was barely a whisper. "We can't afford that either." "Then you can sign over the deed to the house and walk away." "The house?" Dad looked like I'd slapped him. "That's our home. We've lived there for 30 years. And now it belongs to me, unless you can pay what you owe." Toby stood up abruptly. "This is insane. You can't just take their house." "Actually, I can. That's how debt works, Toby. Something you never bothered to learn." "There has to be another way," Mom pleaded. "Some kind of payment plan we can afford." "What can you afford?" They looked at each other helplessly. Maybe $2,000 a month," Dad said. "At $2,000 a month, it would take you 22 years to pay off the debt. You'd be in your 80s. "We'll manage somehow." "No." I closed my folder. "Those aren't the terms I'm offering." "Then what are you offering?" Toby demanded. I stood up, smoothing down my skirt. "I'm offering you the same consideration you gave me 7 years ago." "Which is?" "Figure something else out." Mom started sobbing, real ugly sobs that shook her whole body. Dad put his arm around her, but he looked broken too. "Martina, please," he said. "We're begging you. Don't do this. You're begging me." I picked up the photo of Kelvin and put it back in my purse. "Do you remember me, begging you? Do you remember me on my knees in that hospital, crying, pleading with you to help save my son?" "Yes," he whispered. "And what did you do?" We said no." "You said no, and now I'm saying no." I walked toward the door, then turned back. "You have 30 days to vacate the house. After that, I'll have you evicted." "Martina, wait." But I was already walking out, leaving them with their tears and their consequences and the sound of their world falling apart, just like they'd left me 7 years ago. I made it to my car before my hands started shaking. The adrenaline hit me all at once. 7 years of rage and hurt and betrayal finally released. I sat in the parking lot, gripping the steering wheel, trying to process what I'd just done. My phone buzzed. Robin. "How did it go?" It's done. And? How do you feel? I stared at the bank building. I don't know yet. That evening, Kelvin found me on the couch, staring at nothing. Mom, you okay? Yeah, baby, just thinking. He sat down next to me. At 17, he was taller than me, all arms and legs and serious brown eyes. The scar from his surgery was barely visible now, just a thin line on his chest that reminded me every day why I'd done what I did. Robin called. She said you had a meeting with Grandma and Grandpa today. I did. How are they? I looked at my son, this amazing kid who'd survived because I'd refused to give up on him. They're learning some hard lessons. Are we going to see them more now? I don't think so, Kelvin. He nodded like he'd expected that answer. It's okay. We're good on our own. But even as he said it, I could see the questions in his eyes, the same questions I'd had as a kid. Why wasn't I enough? Why didn't they love me the way they loved Toby? The calls started the next morning. Martina, it's Dad. Please call me back. We need to talk. Martina, this is Mom. I know you're angry, but we can work this out. Please. Martina, it's Toby. Look, I get it, okay? You're pissed, but taking it out on Mom and Dad isn't going to solve anything. Call me. I deleted every message without listening to the end. Robin came over that weekend with Chinese takeout and wine. The whole town's talking about it, she said, settling onto my couch. About what? About your parents losing their house, about Toby's bankruptcy, about you. What are they saying about me? Mixed reviews. Some people think you're a badass who finally stood up to your family. Others think you're being cruel to elderly people. And what do you think? Robin was quiet for a moment. I think you did what you had to do, but I also think you need to be prepared for what comes next. What do you mean? I mean, once this gets out, and it will get out, you're going to be the woman who evicted her own parents. That's going to follow you. She was right. By Monday, I could feel the stares at the grocery store, the whispered conversations that stopped when I walked by. Small towns love their gossip, and I'd just given them the story of the year. Is it true? Asked Janet from the coffee shop, where I sometimes worked on my laptop. Did you really buy your parents' debt? It's complicated, but you're kicking them out of their house. They have options. Janet's expression shifted from curious to cold. That's harsh, Martina, even for family that's wronged you. I left without ordering my usual latte. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. I was at Kelvin's school for parent-teacher conferences when I ran into Mrs. Patterson, his history teacher. Martina, I'm so glad to see you. Kelvin's doing wonderfully as always. Thank you. He works hard. He does, though I have to say, he seems a bit distracted lately, worried about something. My stomach dropped. Worried about what? Well, he mentioned that his grandparents might be moving. He seemed upset about it. That night I found Kelvin in his room, supposedly doing homework, but really just staring at his textbook. Mrs. Patterson says you're worried about Grandma and Grandpa. He looked up, caught. I heard some kids at school talking. They said you're making them move out of their house. It's more complicated than that. But it's true. I sat on his bed. Yes. It's true. Why? How do you explain 7 years of pain to a 17-year-old? How do you tell your son that his grandparents chose money over his life? They hurt us, Kelvin. When you were sick, they could have helped, but they chose not to. But they're old now, and their family. The word tasted bitter. They didn't act like family when we needed them. Kelvin closed his textbook. Mom, I know what they did was wrong, but making them homeless isn't going to change the past. It's not about changing the past. It's about consequences. Whose consequences? Theirs or yours? The question hit me like a slap. What do you mean? I mean, you're angry all the time now. You don't smile anymore. You don't laugh. It's like you're so focused on punishing them that you're punishing yourself too. I'm not. Yes, you are. And you're punishing me. That stopped me cold. How am I punishing you? Because now I don't have grandparents at all. Before, they were just absent. Now they're gone forever. I stared at my son, this wise, thoughtful kid who'd somehow grown up while I was busy plotting revenge. Do you want to see them? I want you to be happy, Mom, and this isn't making you happy. He was right. The victory I'd imagined, the satisfaction of finally having power over the people who'd hurt me, it felt hollow, empty. My phone rang, Dad's number. Answer it, Kelvin said quietly. I looked at the phone, then at my son, then back at the phone. Hello, Dad. Martina. His voice was broken, exhausted. We need to talk. All of us. Please. I don't think there's anything left to say. There is. About Kelvin, about what we did, about what we should have done. I closed my eyes. What do you want, Dad? I want to tell you the truth. The real truth. About why we didn't help you. I already know why. You chose Toby. No, we chose wrong, but not for the reasons you think. Please, Martina, give us one chance to explain. Then, if you still want us gone, we'll go. I looked at Kelvin, who was watching me with those serious eyes. One conversation, that's all. Thank you, but not at the house. Neutral ground. Where? I thought for a moment. The hospital, where Kelvin was treated. I want to have this conversation where it all started. Okay. When? Tomorrow, 7 p.m. I hung up and looked at my son. Are you sure about this, Mom? No. But you're right about one thing. This isn't making me happy. Maybe it's time to find out if the truth will. The hospital cafeteria was nearly empty at 7 p.m. Just a few tired-looking nurses grabbing coffee and a janitor mopping the far corner. I chose a table near the windows where I could see the pediatric wing, the same wing where Kelvin had fought for his life. My parents arrived together, looking older and smaller than I'd ever seen them. Mom's hair was completely grey now, and Dad walked with a slight limp I didn't remember. Toby wasn't with them. Where's the golden boy? I asked as they sat down. He's not coming, Dad said. This is between us. Mom's hands were shaking as she folded them on the table. Martina, we need to tell you something. Something we should have told you 7 years ago. I'm listening. Dad cleared his throat. When you called us that night when Kelvin was sick, we did have money. You were right about that. I know I was right. But it wasn't our money, Mom said quietly. It was Toby's. I frowned. What do you mean? The $50,000 we gave him for the restaurant, it was his money to begin with, his inheritance from your grandmother. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? When your grandmother died, she left money for both of you, Dad continued. 50,000 each. We were supposed to give it to you when you turned 30. But you gave mine to Toby. Mom started crying. We thought his restaurant would succeed. We thought we could double your money, give you more than your grandmother left you. So, you gambled with my inheritance? We thought we were helping. Dad said. We thought if Toby's business took off, we could give you 100,000 instead of 50. I stared at them, trying to process this. So, when I called you, begging for help to save Kelvin, you had my own money. Money that was already mine. Yes, Mom whispered. And you didn't tell me. We were ashamed, Dad said. We'd already given it to Toby. The restaurant was struggling, and we thought if we just gave him a little more time. You let me borrow money from loan sharks. You let me work 3 jobs. You let me nearly kill myself trying to save my son, and all along you had my own inheritance. We were going to tell you, Mom said, once Toby paid us back. But he never paid you back, did he? They shook their heads. And then the restaurant failed, and you lost my money along with everything else. We're so sorry, Martina, Dad said. We made a terrible mistake. I sat back in my chair, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath me. All these years, I'd thought they'd chosen Toby over me. But the truth was worse. They'd stolen from me to give to him. There's more, Mom said. More? Your grandmother's will. She didn't just leave you money. She left you the house too. The cafeteria seemed to spin around me. What? Half the house was supposed to be yours when you turned 35. The other half was ours until we died. Then it would go to you completely. But I'm 35 now. We forged your signature, Dad said, his voice barely audible. We signed over your half to secure the loans for Toby's businesses. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. So, not only did you steal my inheritance money, you stole my inheritance property too. We thought we could fix it before you found out, Mom said. We thought Toby would succeed, and we could buy back your half of the house, and you'd never have to know. But instead, you lost everything. Everything, Dad confirmed. I looked out the window at the pediatric wing, remembering those terrible nights when I'd sat beside Kelvin's bed, wondering how I was going to save him. Do you know what I did to get the money for Kelvin's treatment? They shook their heads. I borrowed from people who break legs when you don't pay them back. I worked myself into the ground. I sold everything I owned, and the whole time you had my money. My house. My inheritance. We know, Mom sobbed. We know, and we're so sorry. Sorry doesn't give me back 7 years of my life. No, Dad said. It doesn't. But maybe this will help. He pulled out a manila envelope and slid it across the table. What is it? Legal documents. We're signing over our half of the house to you. All of it. No conditions, no strings attached. I opened the envelope. The deed transfer was already notarized, just waiting for my signature. We can't undo what we did, Mom said, but we can make sure you get what was always rightfully yours. And what about your debt? The 500,000 you owe me? We'll figure something out, Dad said. We'll get jobs, make payments, whatever it takes. But we won't fight you on the house. It's yours. I stared at the papers, then at my parents. They looked broken, defeated, but also somehow relieved, like they'd been carrying this secret for so long that telling the truth was almost a blessing. There's something else you should know, I said. What? I never intended to make you homeless. They looked confused. I was going to let you stay in the house, make reasonable payments. I just wanted you to understand what it felt like to be powerless. But now, Mom asked. I signed the deed transfer and slid it back to them. Now you're going to sell the house. Use the money to pay down your debt. and you're going to find a small apartment somewhere and live within your means for the first time in your lives." "And after that?" Dad asked. "After that, we'll see. Maybe we can figure out how to be a family. A real family this time." Mom reached across the table and touched my hand. "Can you ever forgive us?" I looked at her, really looked at her. She was just a flawed, frightened old woman who'd made terrible choices trying to fix other terrible choices. "I don't know yet," I said honestly, "but I'm willing to try." Dad nodded. "That's more than we deserve." "Yes," I said, "it is." I stood up to leave, then turned back. "One more thing. Kelvin wants to meet you. The real you, not the grandparents who only showed up when it was convenient. If you're interested in being in his life, you'll have to earn it." "We'd like that," Mom said. "More than anything." "Then prove it." I walked out of the hospital cafeteria feeling lighter than I had in years, not because I'd forgiven them, that would take time, but because the truth was finally out, and the truth, even when it's ugly, is always better than lies. My phone buzzed, a text from Kelvin. "How did it go?" I typed back. "Better than expected. Come home. We need to talk about your grandparents." "Good talk or bad talk?" "Complicated talk. The best kind." I got in my car and drove home to my son, to our life, to whatever came next. The revenge was over. The real work was just beginning.